Attention gamers. Dr. Rav here, PhD in Internet Conspiracies, Reddit Titties and Rift Disorders, and today I'd like to talk directly to anyone suffering from the following symptoms. Do you have an inability to freeze your lane because it would mean your jungling streak would have to come to an end? Do you feel the need to use in-game emotes as a way of communicating how much you dislike your teammates? Does blood rush to the tip of your toxic urethra at the thought of bouncing an axe off another player, resulting in taking bad trades and finding yourself in the front line of all fights? Is your temper shorter than a midget's dick, resulting in you abandoning your lane and doing things like AFK split a lane while objectives are on the map and team fights are taking place? Do you choose a career that revolves around your ability to catch objects, only to fail and still think you'll still commit to fights, thinking you'll be more useful than a chocolate teapot while having less vision than someone trying to pin the tail on a donkey until you've reached double-digit deaths while informing your team that it's their fault you are feeding? If so, you may be suffering from what's known as Draven syndrome, and today we will be observing a rather severe case that I've recently run into in the wild. So if you'd like to support my research in identifying all syndromes that typically affect only your teammates on the Rift, please thank the sponsor of my science, War Thunder, the biggest, most dankest drive and dunk on your enemy's vehicle combat game in the history of the planet, which is now completely free on PC, console and even your mobile devices. No driver's license required. You can get behind the wheel of over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters and ships from 10 major nations, spanning from old-ass history 1920 looking shit all the way to today's newest models. Enjoy hyper-realism in the graphics, the environment, the vehicle detail and the sound effects that immerse you into the look and feel of navigating one of these bad boys in real life. The level of detail in the models is kind of ridiculous, as you can see specific engines and fuel tanks, all the way down to specific types of ammo or missiles. Not to mention X-ray view, where you can see exactly where you hit your enemies, what was damaged and where the impact was. With a new mobile version of the game modes for every player, and crazy customizations available, there's no surprise over 70 million players are participating in epic PvP battles, and there's no shortage of content or players who are interested in getting the most immersive experience you can in navigating and fighting with the deadliest vehicles in military history. And for limited time only, new and returning players on PC and consoles that haven't played in the last 6 months will also receive a massive bonus pack across all platforms that includes multiple premium vehicles, the exclusive vehicle Decorator Eagle of Valor, 100,000 Silver Lions and 7 days of premium accounts. So check out the links below and let's get into the game. Now, as I mentioned, I was fortunate enough to study a case of Draven syndrome live in the wilderness, as I was on the opposing side with a close-up view to the dipshit himself. I immediately noticed the unintelligent rage controlling his decisions. His first trade, he refused to back off as I continued firing warning shots in his direction, trying to see what stimulus could stop such brainless behavior, as it became apparent he was willing to die just to whip one more axe at my midget serving his medical residence at my side. Then, after I spent a bit of my surgeon's salary on a dank new pair of kicks, it looks like he's learned his lesson not to fight me as much as an autistic fruit fly learns to stay away from a light, as he sprints towards me just to lose half his health without accomplishing anything. It was at this point where I could see concerned friends and family flying in from out of town as they were troubled to receive the news. The first was the Candy Crush mascot, but I had to shoo him away as I didn't want any interference with my research, and sure enough, guess who was more out of place than a sumo wrestler at an Anorexics Anonymous meeting. Even after Sparky bailed him out once, he just marinated in a terrible position, and after my post-op review of the footage, it reveals that if I wasn't behaving like that of a culpus, which is the scientific name for vagina to all you med school virgins, then he likely wouldn't have survived his decision. But here you can see any right clicker of sound mind would back off in such an unhealthy state, perhaps even going back to a local fountain to rest, but he was insistent on juggling till his last breath, with movement more predictable than the plot of a shitty Hallmark movie, until he was sent back to base once again. Then I observed that despite failing in every encounter with me, he still charged forward upon seeing me. At one point I even flung a cube purposely, obviously a few feet to his side, to try and scare him off, but nothing seemed to get him to back down. Numerous times I would approach him, seeing if I could observe a change in behavior, but time after time he looked at an outnumbered situation, and rather than running he would double down, showing on a few occasions the true potential of his power, if only it could be harnessed with any degree of measurable thought. And I do want to acknowledge that what I was doing can be seen as cruel to those close to him, as on multiple occasions I faced fierce death threats from above trying to force me into stopping my research. At one point we called down weaponized Stephen Hawking for his expert opinion, and you can see Xerath exhibit the appropriate response to receiving a surprise visit in his lane. Then there was Draven, whose symptoms were getting so bad due to the fact that he knew the power he wielded and came dangerously close to eliminating one of our researchers. I then had an opportunity to observe his behavior in an intimate one-on-one encounter where he seemingly had no regard for the health bar above his head as he continued to invite trades until it was obvious to me that he had to be put down like the animal he was. It was at this point where I lost sight of the subject, but luckily a peer of mine sent a video that he appeared in his lane of a lab, seemingly frustrated and ready to abandon the way the game is supposed to be played. He was quick to pick a fight with the first person he saw, despite being much younger and less intelligent, as he missed his abilities and got blown up like a sex doll at a Garen main's house. He then returned to that lane, seemingly inconveniencing the windshitter who was assigned to be there, as he could give two fucks about anyone except for himself. The problem was this attracted more effort from my side, as we were aware of his power but also aware that the dipshit would be just as aggressively cocky in fights mid as he was bought as my little Puerto Rican PA come in to help take him down once again. It quickly became obvious that I wouldn't be able to continue my research alone in the bot lane, so after I removed a tower down there I moved my practice up north, which is the norm of surgeons with my level of seniority, but apparently the gothic nurse felt the need to question my involvement in his lane, which just shows how much he has to learn, as I displayed the breadth of my knowledge by giving Diana quite a dicking right in front of him. Of course I then got word from Dr. Hawking that the 2016 Tyler 1 was back in the bot lane again and just as blindly overextended as ever, which turned into quite the cage match between the rat in the astronaut costume and the 0-8 juggling Jakob himself. I on the other hand was enjoying the amenities that come from getting paid so well for doing this kind of research, and while I know being a medical professional is important, I don't need to constantly be called things like. The one thing to note though is that some of the symptoms of Draven syndrome can be highly contagious, as you can see at one point my team's Poppy caught his utter lack of awareness for a few seconds and it costed her life. At this point, while you could see his own teammates trying to salvage the lane that he took a bloody shit in all game, he was up north almost intentionally trying to avoid any sense of teamwork, as one can assume he was accommodating such unhelpful gameplay with a flurry of derogatory remarks towards his team in chat, so I went to punish such behavior. Their team was suffering from the symptoms of second-hand Draven syndrome, which in this case meant they would have to play nearly perfect to overcome the amount of funding each player on our team had received to observe their Draven firsthand. And speak of the dipshit devil, he was bot lane unsurprisingly alone, spraying bat symbols all over the ground. The only thing is no hero was coming to save him, as afflicted Draven mains are under the mindset that they can do it all themselves. And as if getting embarrassed 1v1 wasn't enough, he invited a second to take part in his 10th death. All while his team was trying to overcome the reality that they are fighting a 4v6, and despite thinking they escaped from my fedness, I had traps set up for anyone trying to escape my petty pellet gun. And while Draven yielded strong powers even in poorly made decisions, eventually it catches up to him that others around him will be much stronger due to the ridiculous amount of gold he spoon-fed them all game. At one point I got distracted from my studies to revisit an old syndrome that, fun fact, kicked off this entire field of studies, Yasuo syndrome. I would invite you to check out my work there. It is truly my magnum opus of rift syndromes, as you can see the windshitter die, and then very shortly after we chased down cotton candy asshole Larry Bird for a second kill. All while Draven continued jamming himself deep into a lane worse than a Yone main jams himself into a fleshlight, only to run into the gothic nurse who called me up and was like, "I feel bad, we can't just kill him again," and I was like, "You're right, let's try just throwing abilities in random directions near him to see if it can scare some sense into him," but it didn't, so he had to be put down again. That said, I do feel bad, as Draven syndrome victims do live a lonely life from being such insufferable fuckfaces, and this leads to them always being perfect candidates to receive a surprise visit from Thor's toddler while having the audacity to think they can fight anyone on the rift. And as you can see, even though there is kiting and an extended fight, it turns out when having 0 kills and more deaths than an entire team, it's not a promising situation to be in. Turns out one of the effects of studying Draven syndrome from the other side is that you may find yourself extremely fed. Our test subject was now experiencing a rather severe symptom known as Draven death déjà vu, where you see him dying in the same way to the same person in the same place 2 times in a row without doing anything different, like a board certified shithead. I go to the site of his deja vu death to collect test samples, but of course a wind shitter is going to be defensive about resources going towards curing any syndrome that isn't Yasuo syndrome, so unfortunately I have to kill him on account of messing with science, and it is at this point it's revealed to us that there is a considerable amount of toxic typing coming out of this feed fest of a Draven. And like any other syndrome video, this one ends poetically in me euthanizing a poor windshitter one last time before the enemy team finally gives into the forces that come with having a player with Draven syndrome on their team in a performance that reads 0-14. Please subscribe to support our research, and thanks again to War Thunder for sponsoring today's video. Check them out using my links below to get all the free goodies on the screen and experience the most detailed military history battle extravaganza on the market.